A lot of people said, don't say meme coins are a casino because it makes crypto look bad. And then the other side is saying meme coins.
Look, meme coins are the cocaine of crypto.
Sure, I think that's fair to say.
Like, people get so hyped on meme coins. We come up with fantastic business plans. We're going to get fucking rich, Zach. This meme coin's going to take us all the way. And then by the time it wears off, you're stuck with fucking nothing.
Welcome, everybody, into another episode here at Coinage. I'm the host of Coinage, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios alongside Coinage producer Nate Skid here today.
Yo, how's it going?
As we have Bitcoin hovering around the $62,000 mark. And Nate, Bitcoin facing the worst month since November 2022 as we're watching the trading action play out right now. That back then, Nate, was pretty much the depths of the bear market. So never a good comparison point, but a little bit of shakiness here to recap, to look ahead this week. We also got the Fed in focus. Big decision on Wednesday that could swing all of this, depending on where things go. And a lawsuit to get into between the SEC and the camp at Consensus. There's a lot going on right now, but nonetheless, things, you could look at it one way, you could look at it the other way.
I mean, I thought that Bitcoin was supposed to be a little bit more durable than this. I thought that the big decision with the ETF was supposed to make the price a little less volatile. How do you read it?
You would think. I mean, obviously, I think volatility down slightly. We also have the CoinShares report for fund flows. Texas, we want to bring that one up too, because I think probably it's not too hard to draw a line between the money flowing in through the ETFs, which is now down for 3 consecutive weeks, and where the price action's going. Of course, it's not the only thing that matters, right? People can buy and sell Bitcoin without needing to go through an ETF, but that's kind of what one of the main momentum drivers for 2024 was ETFs, money pouring in through them. And if you have people kind of taking foot off the gas on that, you got less money coming in. And here we are at 62K.
Right. Well, like some big names like Peter Brandt, he had Bitcoin hitting 200,000 just a couple of months ago, right? And now he's saying that the bull run is effectively over. Like, it's so hard to be able to determine any long-term plays in crypto. And I thought that the ETFs, I really did. I thought the ETFs were supposed to bring a little bit more, I don't know, a professional class into crypto, which would make it a little bit more, not quite so nuts.
Yeah, I'm looking at you mentioned Peter Brandt's call. I'm looking at it now. CoinDesk wrote it up. Of course, he's been kind of in the camp of we're going to 200K. He said that as early as February. And if you look at kind of what his access right now, or his outlook right now, is built around this 80% decay, exponential decay piece. Which, anytime someone comes out with one price target and then 2 months later comes out with another one and saying that, we've already peaked at 73K and then everything's going down from here, I don't know how much credence I give it. Sometimes you got to make headlines. Sometimes you got to get the people going, and you say these things. I'm still in the camp of Fundstrat's price call of 125K by the end of the year. And I'm still kind of looking at that, Nate, because if you think about kind of where we were and where we're going, of course, nothing goes up in a straight line. Right. And like we just mentioned, the ETF flows come and go. You got Hong Kong's now going live. Australia's going live. None of these markets are as large as the US, but I think, it is a signal of we don't need to put the whole market on our shoulders.
Okay, but we're looking at a dip.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at 3 consecutive months of money inflows going down from the ETFs.
Weeks, yeah.
Sorry. You're saying that you still feel confident that Bitcoin's going to go to 125 by the end of the year. But are you putting your money where your mouth is?
Yeah, you always ask me that.
I do, because there's a difference between what we'll say and
you always
what
ask me
we'll
that.
do.
But I also think my answer back then was the same. I said yes. And I basically, we've retraced essentially to kind of where that entry point was, which is basically in the low 60s. Here we are at 62.
Sure.
So, I would say it's a good entry point regardless if you think about it. The one thing is what is the next catalyst? And maybe that's a good segue here to get into kind of where we're at with not just Bitcoin, but Ethereum and people now building on top of Bitcoin, which we're going to get into in a second. But I do want to show, before we move on, just the monthly returns here, because that's essentially where we're going back to show how bad this has gotten in the month of April, potentially. And we still got a couple trading days left, Nate. So it ain't over yet.
But what are we looking at?
You're looking at monthly returns. You're looking at the worst month since November 2022. So you can go back. Back then it was 16%. April right now, I think we're down about 12%. So, it could be worse than November, depending on how the next couple of days go. We'll have to watch what the Fed does.
But the best entry point would have been when you and I started this crazy
back then in November
experiment together at 17.
Sure, but I mean that's the thing. We're gonna get into that. I mean, you want more beta? You can go somewhere else. Maybe you're not gonna put your money in Bitcoin. Is it gonna double? That's a thing. Double by the end of the year? Yeah, that's what Fundstrat's saying. That's the camp that a lot of people are in. What are the catalysts to get us there? Let's talk about those. We'll shift over to SEC versus Ethereum here because this is the other big news, Nate, in terms of, I guess, kind of what everyone's been watching is basically consensus going on the offense. So if you missed this, I don't know how you would have last week. You had consensus coming out and filing a lawsuit against the SEC as they make their push. Of course, if you've been watching any of this, Bitcoin's already deemed a commodity. The SEC has been going back and forth. You had Gary Gensler in front of Congress basically saying, I don't want to answer your questions over whether or not Ethereum's a security. Now it's all coming to a head as you have consensus trying to go on offense, filing this lawsuit against the SEC, saying that it's regulatory overreach.
But it makes sense. It makes sense for them to go on offense to try to push a decision because a decision had just been made. Am I wrong? Like, are they following in the footsteps of Bitcoin?
I mean, that decision in terms of Bitcoin, similarly, interestingly, if you go back to think about prior heads of the SEC, essentially that decision had already been made.
Yeah.
That Ethereum was kind of in the camp of it's decentralized enough to not be deemed a security. And Gary Gensler basically coming out and trying to undo that. There was some pretty good reporting here as well from Eleanor Terrett, friend of the show, coming out and saying that, look, this has been basically in the making for a year, that the SEC had already kind of greenlit this so-called investigation into Ethereum 2.0 to go after Ethereum as a security. So they've clearly thought about this.
Well, but how could one be a security and the other not?
I mean, we've talked about that before too, in terms of the tests that they look at, right? The Howey test and how decentralized something is, what promises are you making, and I think that's kind of. We're going to get into this too. That's why meme coins have always been kind of seen as, it's not really making any promises whatsoever. And so it can't be a security. Whereas with this, you've got a centralized team coming out of consensus, Joe Lubin and Vitalik.
Sure.
And so you've got kind of all the makings of what could have been. I think where everyone's pissed, myself included, anyone in crypto might be pissed, is that like, hey, how come this is happening now, right? When a lot of people were just excited about an Ethereum ETF getting approved, which definitely 0% chance now for the May deadline. But I mean, this is just kind of like, you cannot overstate how important this is now going to become, because this impacts basically everything beyond Ethereum. If it's deemed a security, then Solana's got problems, Avalanche's problems, right, everybody's got problems.
Okay, but like, explain it to an idiot. What is the functional difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum that would make Bitcoin's ETF greenlit and Ethereum's not? And the next question beyond that is, let's say that ETH is greenlit. Then what's the limiting principle on any of the others that come up behind it? And so I wonder if the SEC opened Pandora's box with Bitcoin, and now like can they close it for all the others that want to come up behind it?
I think that was very clear that Gary Gensler, I think that's when it became clear to me. Yeah. So James Seyfarth at Bloomberg, by the way, shout out to him for giving me my props, because when we had him on,
first off, really,
I'll shout out someone who gives me props.
Shout out yourself?
I know, I'm shouting out someone for giving me my props is what I'm doing, which I will gladly do every time. No, what I was saying was, we had him on the show back when Bitcoin ETFs were getting approved. Remember, Gary Gensler went on his press tour and said, I don't want anyone to extrapolate beyond Bitcoin. We've approved the Bitcoin ETFs. Don't extrapolate beyond it. Bitcoin's fair game. Nothing else is. And even then, he was saying, I don't endorse Bitcoin. It's just something that's now been approved to trade in an ETF. So as lukewarm, as cold of water you can pour onto an approval is what Gary Gensler did. And when he said all of that, I think it became very clear that ETFs for anything beyond Bitcoin were not going to get approved. And that's just because it's his call. He can do what he wants. And I think that's kind of where this year becomes so important, because it's an election year, and all of this might be for naught. Keep in mind, if Trump wins, Gary Gensler's not going to be there. I don't think, unless he really wants to play. I mean, I don't know.
Doubt that.
So I mean, there's a lot to go into this,
I just think it's going to be really difficult to explain how Bitcoins could be approved ETH's not, and then all of the others not. And then the flip side is if ETH is approved, what's going to be the limiting principle on the others that are not?
I mean, that's what Congress was trying to figure out. Congress wanted to lay those guidelines out.
Sure.
And they were getting pretty specific, but it's not moving anywhere now. But it does kind of bring the point now, I think, Nate, to the other piece we're moving on to, which is that people are building on Bitcoin, I think, because it has this now lead, so to speak, in that, all right, if Bitcoin is seen as a commodity, then you can build in that space and not have to worry, which I don't think is necessarily the right way to read this. But we did have the co-founder of Stacks on Coinage last week, and they're one of the biggest projects building on top of Bitcoin right now. And if you're looking for a way to maybe add some beta, right? So you're looking for opportunities and you're saying the SEC is going after ETH. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but Bitcoin's there and, it's up a good amount on the year. But then you got Stacks, which is building on top of Bitcoin, offering smart contracts and DeFi capabilities on top of Bitcoin. It's only up 50%. Bitcoin's up 41%. So maybe you're looking there and saying, look, there's a long way to go for everything that's getting built on top of Bitcoin. At the same time that the SEC is going after ETH, perhaps that's the way I want to play some of this. And I just want to play what Muneeb Ali, the co-founder of Stacks, said on Coinage last week, because it's a very interesting thing in terms of the timeline for people building what made Ethereum now on top of Bitcoin. Take a listen to what Muneeb told us.
Bitcoin is by far the thing that everyone knows about. It has the biggest community, the biggest brand name, and it is also like very, very simple that Bitcoin is just trying to be money, right? It's not trying to be something else. It's not trying to be something very complicated. And then most of the stuff that people are building on Ethereum, Solana, other places, it can be built as L2s on top of Bitcoin. And I think once we were able to really unlock that, once we were able to actually give people the roadmap, but also the tooling and the software for how exactly that's going to happen, I think that really, really helped. And a lot of other capital and developers started coming in as well. And now it's becoming a category. So it's not just Stacks that's saying, hey, we are Bitcoin L2, we can enable this. There are tons of other developers, other projects that are coming in, and this entire category of Bitcoin L2s is actually expanding pretty rapidly, which is great to see.
The entire category of Bitcoin Layer 2s, Nate's kid, is expanding rapidly. As we heard from him, one of the largest Layer 2s in the Bitcoin space, Stacks, as I'm looking at the chart, over the past year, up 228%. Over the year, as I said, up way less than that in terms of just the 50% gain in 2024. But, in that interview, I thought it was pretty fascinating just to hear, and we heard the same thing from Sean Farrell at Fundstrat talking about why Stacks is such a big part of his bet on the space, is that you're really betting on the Bitcoin economy taking off. For so long, people have looked at Bitcoin as only a store of value. It's digital gold. You buy it, you put it in your locker, and you forget about it and just leave it there, which is true. I think, for the most part, probably the way you should look at it.
Sure.
But now they're building on top of Bitcoin all the ways that you can basically tap into that and use it transactionally, which has always been the promise. Lightning Network tried to do it, never really panned out. Yeah. Stacks comes along, introduces their own token, tries to align incentives. Constantly, the technology is being upgraded. I think it's pretty interesting to watch all of this play out, again, at a particular time when the SEC is going after Ethereum, and Ethereum just kind of seems caught in no man's land right now.
I just cannot get over the fact that the government is picking winners and losers and how against the ethos of crypto this is, and yet here we are.
Which ethos of crypto in what sense?
Well, just this, like the decentralization, the lack of authority, the trustless nature of it. All of crypto seems to be about being permissionless and being able to operate outside of systems. And yet here it is, fighting for its life through the systems that it's going to need to kind of get the green light from to operate and to thrive. And so for a government to pick a winner or a loser to say that Bitcoin's ETF could go through and all of this building can happen and flourish on top of it.
That's the government side, though. That's the government side, though. And that's not, you can't lean on the government to be living crypto values. That's not going to happen.
I'm just saying that it just is a little bit.
Well, to your point, I think it is interesting that now all the big rally and momentum that Bitcoin's caught basically came from BlackRock and all these other institutional players also coming on board and saying Bitcoin is digital gold. But now you've got the momentum in Bitcoin camp actually not being that at all. It's the opposite. They're saying Bitcoin should not just be digital gold. It should also be everything that Ethereum did. And so that, I think, is kind of an interesting kind of Trojan horse that they sold Wall Street on, and also maybe potentially complicates what I think Gary Gensler greenlit, which was Bitcoin's digital gold. And so we're signing off on it. But now everything that makes Ethereum problematic is coming over to Bitcoin too. So it's all just funny to watch,
okay,
I think,
but
personally.
This also leads to a bigger question. And while I got you here and I'm sitting in this chair for a day, could there be more than one L1, or will there only be one? Will there only be Bitcoin at the end of this? Like, is there, we
it's half the market cap. It's half the market cap. So maybe, I mean, you can make the case that already Bitcoin's like the only one. Obviously, that would be an argument I probably wouldn't agree with, but it's the one that like everybody knows, and it's the one that's now gaining momentum in terms of what's being built on it.
Let me ask another question then. Are all the other ones just pissing in Bitcoin's pool? So are with all of these other entities out there, are they just making it more difficult and more confusing for crypto to exist and thrive if it were only Bitcoin?
I don't know about that, but it's a good segue into kind of where we're going with our next subject, if that's what you're trying to do. But I also do think it is interesting, maybe, and this is the last point I'll make in terms of this kind of battle as you're talking about it. I got this article up, Texas, showing that the 6-month low in terms of Ethereum fees is here. Just kind of the last point. As all of that kind of moves over, if you don't have so much DeFi and congestion for NFTs on the Ethereum network, 6 months low for fees. Santiment coming out and saying that could be a sign that potentially altcoin season may be upon us. It just in terms of like what generally, you think about these cycles, usually what happens is Bitcoin gets its pop, takes over, as you're just talking about, becomes the dominant piece of the market in terms of money and flows and market cap. And then you halfway through, essentially, or some point down the line, all of a sudden, all that was forgotten comes back again. Yeah. And so Santiment pointing out that potentially this could be the catalyst, at least a flag being raised saying 6-month low in fees seems like now would be the time to maybe pay attention to ETH or altcoins, as the case may be. And I think that's interesting and maybe something worth pointing out there. But I do want to shift over to the other altcoins that are basically loved or hated. And that's what was sparked this weekend, Nate. Huge back and forth on crypto Twitter. If you weren't paying attention, sparked by an op-ed from Chris Dixon over at Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z Crypto. Just trying to pull this up right now because he basically hit on the third rail in crypto, which is attack no meme coin. Everyone knows that rule. You just can't attack meme coins out there. You're going to have degens coming after you. But I thought it was a very good op-ed. I will defend Chris Dixon if I must. Not that he needs any defense from me. Okay. But this is what we're looking at. His tweet basically set up the op-ed in the Financial Times. He said he wrote an op-ed in FT. My goal was not to defend or diminish meme coins. It's to point out the backward incentives of a regulatory regime, which we were just talking about in the U.S. that only lets meme coins thrive, Nate Skid. And
thrive's an interesting word.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they are thriving, if you depending on which meme coin you look at. But it sparked quite a bit of backlash, shall we say. A lot of people came after Chris. A lot of people came after anyone who's saying meme coins are bad. A lot of people said, don't say meme coins are a casino because it makes crypto look bad. And then the other side is saying meme coins.
Look, meme coins are the cocaine of crypto.
Sure, I think that's fair.
Like, people get so hyped on meme coins. We come up with fantastic business plans. We're going to get fucking rich, Zach. This meme coin's going to take us all the way. And then by the time it wears off, you're stuck with fucking nothing. And that happens over and over again. Do you remember Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10?
I haven't checked on that in a while.
Okay, listen. There was a day where this coin was brought up to us and we laughed. 3 days later, Zach had said to us, if we had bought in when it was this, we would have this much now. And we felt like shit. And then a week later, it was like back down to nothing. So I metaphorically lived the rise and fall of a shit coin.
Yes.
And as a driver of hype, sure, but it's really, really vapid. And I think that the long term, and I know people are probably going to be like, who the fuck is this guy? But long term, there's no way these shit coins are healthy for the longevity of a robust cryptocurrency future.
You're going to make me take the other side of this, by the way, which is not really the position I wanted to take, but here we are because actually you pointed out Harry Potter. It's always hard to really get the name right. Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10.
Don't tell me it's up.
Of course it's still up. I mean, if you think about that's where this is a casino. As people come in at under a cent.
Sure.
And it sits there and it goes up and down, but it's still at 9 cents. And being at 9 cents right now, when it was under a cent,
I'm not disagreeing.
I'm just saying that's there. But I would agree
that there are some get-rich-quick schemes that work for a time for some people.
Sure.
I'm just saying long term. when you have something as foundationally experimental as
going on a rant.
no, I'm not going on a rant, but like an experiment this large and weird, I think is going to need some seriousness behind it. And I think that all of the shit coins, meme coins, it's just a distraction from the larger goal.
Well, they make it it's an easy dunk when you're talking about the Elizabeth Warrens of the world who are looking for easy dunks. And you never want to give regulators an easy dunk. And unfortunately, a lot of meme coins do give people easy dunks. However, I will say, this is a tweet from the co-founder of Solana. Raj was out basically defending meme coins, saying meme coins are scaring away serious builders, jokingly, I think pointing over to Chris Dixon's op-ed. He said, may I remind you about the serious builder who set all this work in motion. If you're fragile enough to get spooked by how young people choose to use permissionless systems to have fun, you will quite simply not make it here, with a picture of none other than Vitalik overlooking the ocean with a little cat backpack and some gloves.
Okay.
And again, so, listen, so,
Nikola Tesla, weird guy. Inventors, weird people. Like, the people that really move the bar are not going to be your average person, right? And so to point to him and say, this is who young people choose, sure, I get it. I'm just saying that the breadth of shitcoins out there, the fact that they feel like Ponzi schemes, the fact that so many people have been burned by them. Remember the Dogecoin millionaire?
Yeah.
I wonder how he's doing not buying his mama house. Like, it's just so stupid that people, that these are what get all the attention and the hype mostly, and they never pan out or rarely ever do. And then you have more serious conversations that get put on the back burner or at the adults table, and that's the stuff that's really going to lead to the success of the project.
Well, I think, again, as the person
You're
running
making the guy with the fucking ponytail sound like
the guy in the sweater is going to back you up and say that, yes, obviously that's kind of why we're all here at Coinage in terms of what we're building as a project where people can legitimately buy an NFT and co-own this with us. I mean, that's the whole point. So I have to defend Chris Dixon and what he's saying here, because mostly I'm in that camp. Yes. I'm in the camp of how do you actually share legitimate co-ownership in what someone is trying to do and build without violating the laws as they exist. And his whole op-ed is just built around, it sucks that there are people trying to build real projects. Well, meme coins can do what they're doing and not have any of those fears just because they say there's no real upside here.
And this is a throwback to season 1. There's a reason Splooge Coin doesn't exist.
Yeah, that is a throwback to season 1. That one's deep cut. I don't know if anyone's going to get that reference. But regardless, very interesting. And I got to defend anyone who's trying to say that these things the technology is for good and to be used for real rational reasons. And I just hope that there's other VCs out there who would agree with that point in what we're trying to build here, not just at Coinage, but our sister project, Best Dish Ever. I also want to move on to the last point here to wrap up the show, Nate, which is, of course, a little bit of a look ahead just in terms of where we go this week, because we got a huge Fed decision coming up on Wednesday. No one's really expecting the Fed to cut rates at that meeting, but people are looking ahead to the rest of the year. And it was weird because we were starting this year out talking about maybe potentially 3 rate cuts.
Yeah.
And now most traders are really just looking at 1. And you got all kinds of weird shenanigans happening right now in the broader traditional markets in terms of, the dollar versus the yen. You got Jay Powell and everyone going to be hanging on his word on Wednesday. And then you just got crypto markets basically hanging out and saying, look, here we are. Mm-hmm. And I guess they're kind of caught in the same camp. But regardless, Wednesday is going to be big just to kind of give forward guidance to hear if Jay Powell has shifted his ideas on inflation being tamed and whether or not we are going to see maybe more than 1 rate cut this year. But it's a big thing to watch. So we included it in our rundown for kind of what to pay attention to, and volatility could potentially come Wednesday.
How exciting, Zach.
Just bracing for it really is honestly what we're trying to do with that one.
This is a weird economy, man.
It is.
It's in, like, to think about, the inflation being down, but the price of food is still up from where it was. It's just a very strange time. I don't know what's going to happen.
I just feel like everyone kind of looks through the Bitcoin lens, and I guess maybe this is the main point of what we're trying to say here is that, so much attention is placed here in the U.S., obviously, as we're all here.
Mm-hmm.
But when you back up and think about where Bitcoin globally is, as we watch the Hong Kong ETFs about to kick off this week as well, you know, we're not the only game in town. And increasingly, I'm seeing that as I'm forced to travel around the world and go to Dubai and all the other places.
Here.
There's some other shit going on outside the U.S., as it turns out. And I think we are maybe potentially, as I look to see how we get to 125K by the end of the year, people are probably overlooking the fact that all of these other countries are still dealing with far worse inflation than what we're looking at and trying to get back down to 2%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And those countries and those markets and people in those countries continue to look at Bitcoin in a way that has not happened before. And that, I think, is an important point to end on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we do, though, like, how was Dubai?
Like, I mean, look, we're going to be rolling out all of our interviews from Dubai, by the way, at Coinage.media. So all of them will be coming out there.
Okay.
But in general, it's clear that, you know, if it's not going to be the U.S., you need other places for these companies to basically call home. And Dubai is one of the leaders in that space. Perhaps you would have noticed that if you just tracked where all the people who ran into problems legally, where they were trying to go.
Are builders going to still look to move outside of the U.S. as these other places come on board?
I mean, I think this year, again, 2024, an election year, it's going to be big.
Is there a universe where Bitcoin's ETF happens, Ethereum's doesn't, and all of the developers and builders from Ethereum move outside? Like, is this a thing that's going to happen?
I don't think so. I think there's always going to be builders here that want to stay in the U.S., ourselves included. Yes. I think that that's going to be the case.
Don't move me to Dubai.
Yeah, well, Coinage isn't moving to Dubai. Can't be over there. Listen, love the people. Love the people. Hey, listen, love it. Like, great people on both sides. Just saying.
Rain is amazing.
Until it's not. But anyways, that'll do it, I think, for us here at Coinage for this weekly recap. As always, you can catch all the biggest headlines in crypto curated for you at Coinage.media. And if you want to co-own the project with us, head there to mint your NFT to co-own Coinage, the fastest growing Web3 outlet. For Nate Skid.
Wait, I got a plug.
Yeah, go for it.
You guys gotta check out Best Dish Ever, the fastest Web3 food show ever.
That people don't even know is Web3.
Awesome. Best Dish Ever. It's a really cool experiential community all around celebrating food and the people that make the best food in New York City and soon to be at other cities in the U.S.
It's true.
But it's a very cool project. There's pure utility in this for an NFT. It is very simple. You buy the NFT, you get invited to chef's tables, you get invited to community events, you get discounts on food, you get to meet the people in the videos. It is freaking awesome.
It is awesome. And it's awesome to see all the interest in it as we've rolled it out. People don't even know it's an NFT. People don't know it's on Avalanche.
That's the best part.
People don't know anything about it.
It's not the best part, but it's a cool part. It's
true.
We're not hiding that it's crypto. We're just saying
it's true.
Not so much crypto.
Yes. Go check it out. bestdishever.nyc. If you're a Coinage member, if you're a Coinage NFT holder, you can already unlock a discount. Hop in the Discord if you don't know about it. For Nate, for myself, for everybody here at Coinage, that's going to do it for us.
Thanks for letting me sit in, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. Have a great week. To everybody else, we'll see you again soon.
Later, guys.